It was January 10th, 1940, when a group of Belgian soldiers freezing at their border post saw something unexpected descending out of the foggy sky. It was a German plane, a Messerschmitt Bf 108, and it was in trouble. As the border guards watched on, the plane struggled to stay aloft before finally crash landing on the Belgian side of the border. Rushing to find out what was going on, the border guards happened upon two men, two German officers in the process of burning a cache of documents close to the wreck site. It's still early in the war. Though she eyed her larger neighbor with anxious suspicion, Belgium was still neutral. But as the men had violated Belgian territory, they were arrested, and in an instant, top-secret invasion plans from the Führer himself were delivered into the hands of the Allies. This bizarre sequence of events would become known as the Mechelen Incident. It was a monumental blunder, one that exposed the Third Reich's true plans for continental Europe, and possibly forced Hitler into a position that would change the course of World War II. In the opening days of September 1939, World War II officially began in Europe. After the invasion of Poland on September 1st, the Allies declared war on September 3rd. In the east, the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany began dividing up the conquered territory of Poland. But in the west, nothing much happened. While Britain began moving troops into France and the Battle of the Atlantic began on the high seas, Germany's western borders remained quiet. As 1939 became 1940, everyone knew there was a storm brewing, but it had not yet broken. In this lull, Hitler and his generals were planning something. This was Fall Gelb, or Case Yellow, also known as the Manstein Plan, after its architect Erich von Manstein. This would be a swift drive northwards to the English Channel, surging through the Netherlands and isolating Belgium and Flanders on the German side of the line. The rapid pace of the assault was intended to catch the Allies off guard, leaving surrounded troops with a stark choice: surrender or annihilation. Details of Fall Gelb were provided to Major Helmut Rheinberger, who was required to take them to Cologne for a briefing with military staff. To get him there, Major Erich Hohnmanns was required to fly him in a borrowed Messerschmitt Bf 108 Typhoon, a reconnaissance plane capable of hitting high speeds. And so, the two men and the top-secret plans took flight. Hohnmanns' flight got off to a bad start and grew progressively worse from there on. Eager to get his precious cargo where it needed to be quickly, Hohnmanns had not accounted for the foggy conditions and poor visibility. He promptly lost his way. To get himself back on course, he began scanning the ground for a landmark he could use to orient himself. The nearby Rhine River would be perfect if only he were able to find it. In fact, Hohnmanns had overshot the Rhine and he was now hopelessly far west and straying into Belgian territory. Apparently growing increasingly panicked by his predicament, Hohnmanns then did something astonishing. He accidentally shifted the wrong lever and cut off the fuel supply. The plane stalled. As Hohnmanns struggled to control his aircraft, the truth dawned on him. They'd need to crash land. Yelling at Rheinberger to brace himself, Hohnmanns secretly prayed they were still over German soil. The two men emerged dazed from the wreckage and began scanning the countryside. Unable to distinguish eastern Belgium from western Germany, they were none the wiser until a nearby farmer informed them where they were. Now it was Rheinberger's turn to panic. Up until this point, Hohnmanns had no idea what sort of dossier Rheinberger was carrying. But now he knew. Rheinberger thought quickly. He told Hohnmanns to act as a decoy, throwing any nearby Belgian troops off the scent by moving away from the plane. Meanwhile, Rheinberger would return to the wrecked craft and burn the top-secret plans. Rheinberger was unsuccessful. The flames took an age to catch, and when they did, a sudden updraft scattered the pages across the frozen ground. Within 10 minutes, Belgian soldiers were upon him. He raised his hands above his head and was taken into custody along with his hapless partner. The half-burned dossier was taken with them. At a watch house beside the bridge on the River Meuse, the Belgian soldiers began figuring out what to do with the two interlopers. The scene was something akin to a Hollywood movie. The two downed airmen together in a room awaiting interrogation with a half-burned dossier of documents just sitting there on the table in front of them. Through a system of gestures and whispers, the two men formed a plan. Hermans would request to go to the toilet and the guards would need to take him. While they were distracted, Rheinberger would grab the documents and stuff them into the stove warming the frigid guardhouse. Amazingly, the plan almost worked. Rheinberger had forgotten one key detail though. The lid of the stove was burning hot. Rheinberger's anguished yelp, followed by the noise of the lid crashing to the floor, alerted the guards. Now, the Belgians knew that something was up. As they scanned the dossier, they found maps, orders, and timetables, all of which were damaged by fire but still legible. And what's more, Rheinberger's desperation to destroy them told the Belgians they were the real deal. Rheinberger now became increasingly desperate. Sobbing desperately, he attempted to grab the Belgian officer's gun, yelling, "I'm finished. I want to put an end to this affair right now." While Hermans now knew the documents were top secret, he still didn't quite realize what they contained. He would later recall, "I thought he was overdoing it a bit and was not behaving like a man." When their captors brought food, Hermans ate it readily. Meanwhile, Rheinberger remained a sobbing wreck beside him. When France and Britain received copies of the dossier, they didn't quite know how to respond. So bizarre was the situation that Britain feared the documents may be a German ruse designed to distract attention from the real thrust of the attack. But France was sufficiently alarmed. They believed the plan was a genuine one. As a compromise, the Allies refrained from escalating the war further but began to reinforce the sectors detailed in the plans. Back in Berlin, Hitler and his general were incensed. There was some discussion over whether the affair was intentional, whether Hermans and Rheinberger were actually spies working for the Allies. But one thing was for certain: Fall Gelb would need to be postponed, and the Nazi high command would need to go back to the drawing board. Hitler now advocated something much more audacious. On February 13th, he told General Alfred Jodl, "We should let them attack in the direction of Sedan. The enemy is not expecting us to attack there." Manstein adjusted his plan accordingly. Fall Gelb was revised, and Sedan became a target. But this meant attacking through the thick forests and rugged terrain of the Ardennes. Yes, this was lightly defended, but it was also a logistical nightmare. On May 10th, the attack went ahead. The rapid German advance overcame the obstacle of the Ardennes and smashed into lightly defended Allied sectors. By June 4th, less than a month later, France had fallen. As for Hermans and Rheinberger, they remained prisoners of the Allies until 1943 and 1944, respectively. Though the two men had been condemned to death in absentia, they were subsequently pardoned. As for the Mechelen Incident itself, it remains one of the great what-ifs of the war. Poor visibility, one hasty pilot, one slip of the hand, one partially burned dossier. If any one of these variables were changed, what would the outcome have been? Of course, we'll never know.